Welcome to the Drive to Success podcast, where faith meets failure and purpose fuels the journey. This is where high-performance, purpose-driven entrepreneurs share the real stories behind their success, the setbacks, the struggles, and the moments that tested their belief, and how those seasons became the foundation for their next level. Because success isn't just built on strategy. It's built on faith, resilience, and trusting the process. Even when you can't see the path ahead, every challenge carries a lesson. Every setback carries a seed. And everything you've been through is preparing you for what's next. This is your reminder. You're not behind. You're being built. Welcome to the Drive to Success podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Drive to Success podcast, inspired by the global movement and best-selling book series created by Rey Perez. We dive deep into the real-world experiences of leaders who have mastered the art of the pivot. This show is dedicated to high-performance entrepreneurs who have failed their way to success and are now sharing those lessons to help you build a world-class celebrity brand. We believe that your story is your power. Joining us to share their journey today is Rey Perez. Rey, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. So happy to be here.
Well, it's awesome to have you on as the inaugural episode of the Drive to Success podcast. And unfortunately, we don't have 14 days to go through your story because I know that it would be that deep. But let's get started off with a little bit of background, your story and your entrepreneurial journey. Where did it all begin for you?
Yeah, I love that. And before I get into that, I'd love to share with the listeners as the inaugural podcast how we came up with this, right? I want to give a little bit of background of what the Drive to Success really is. And for me personally, I was just kind of reflecting on my life at some point where I realized that every success that I've achieved in my life had some type of failure previous to it. And every time I had some type of break, I call it a breakdown, but a failure, I would always have another breakthrough and another success. And I started just kind of thinking back and really like, oh yeah, that time happened back then. And then that happened. And I started realizing that God puts these breakdowns or these failures in our life for us to actually go through to prepare us for the greatness he has in store. But we actually have to go through the breakdowns, kind of like going to the gym and working out and training and no pain, no gain type of situation. And I've always really shared that story with other entrepreneurs and anyone that is going through challenging times in their life of when you're going through these tough moments, always know that there's something great in store for you. And that's always really made me feel positive and happy, even when I'm going through challenging times, which kind of seems like it should be the reverse. And I said, You know what? I really want to share this message. And I want to share stories of my failure and how that led to success. And then I started having this conversation with fellow entrepreneurs and realizing I'm not the only one that's experienced this. So I wanted to deliver that message. And that's how I reached out to you, Mike, who has been publishing books for me and my clients for many years. And we've been doing a lot of business together. And we decided that we were going to create the Drive to Success podcast to share these stories. And then we decided we should publish it in a book as well. So we have the Drive to Success podcast and we have the Drive to Success book series, which right now we have multiple volumes as more authors come in to share their stories. So I just wanted to preface that a little bit of what the Drive to Success actually really is. And we'd like to invite you, if you're an entrepreneur or a founder-led business that has experienced failure and success on the other side, we'd love for you to be on the podcast, share your story, and possibly be in the book as well.
That's really, really good. And, I really feel like I think you've used the term many times, like it's a movement. It's a crusade. It's a vision. It's a mission. It's not just like, oh, be in the book and tell your story. And it's more than just telling your story. It's part of your own mission that you're creating for yourself. And you, Rey, are giving these entrepreneurs the platform to do that, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs see the social media posts or see the things like, oh, you should, and you ought to try and tell your story. And they have no clue how to get it out there. And this is the perfect all-in-one opportunity and platform.
I'll be honest, I published a few books, right? The first one I did was Cracking the Celebrity Code, which is the how-to book, right? How to build your brand, how to get more exposure, how to generate more leads and sales. I did the what entrepreneurs and business owners know about personal branding. And it was like my point to prove to the world that perception is the ultimate reality. But the reality of the situation is none of these books really got into who Rey Perez is and Rey Perez's story and what Rey Perez has been through. And the drive to success has actually been my favorite of all the books because it actually gets into who I am. And I share that with entrepreneurs who are already published authors who say, oh, I already have books, or I've already been in a co-author book. Why would I be in that book? The reason why you want to be in the drive to success is to share your story from a positioning of I'm human, I have vulnerabilities, right? And I can also be humble and share what I've gone through so other people can learn from it. They can associate with it. They can understand that they're not alone. And then how to actually break through and get to the other side. And for me, that's a very powerful message and a very powerful story that all these other business books and how-to books are not going to kind of actually deliver.
I'll throw this in too, that I think when you air quote, what's your story, that people tend to have their little, 2-minute prep, oh, well, whatever their story is, right? Mm-hmm. But in reality, you have a framework for this story that goes into the book, that it guides the entrepreneur through through a proven framework in reality. And it can't just be, I grew up this, I struggled with this, and then I succeeded. It's gotta bob and weave and kind of tug at the heartstrings. And you've got that framework that we roll through so that just in speaking words off the top of their head and having some talking points, their entrepreneurial journey and their vision and their mission really come to life in a more powerful way than if you just said, oh, tell me your story before we get into this conversation. It tends to be a little surface level at that point.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. The context and the framework that we've put into this book and in this interview process that we've created together is very different than what people usually do when they're telling their stories. And that's why I love these volumes. And I really encourage any entrepreneur to be a part of it, no matter how many books you've published, because it's a very special positioning of who you are and what you've done in your life to be able to share with the world. So just super excited that we've put this together and really, I really love to share what I've gone through and at least some of the things, because I've gone through a lot, right? But some of the main challenges that I've had to overcome to really get to each next level of success.
So let's dive in. What is the entrepreneurial journey of Rey Perez?
So I'm going to take you back all the way to 14 years old when I started my very first business called Rey's Lawn Service. I first just started cutting my parents' grass, the neighbor's grass, and a couple neighbors down the street, and started growing and little by little turned into an actual business. And once I was probably 14 and a half when I started. But once I turned 15, I got my learner's permit and I was able to drive with an adult in the car. And at 16, I got my very first car, which is a pickup truck. And that gave me the freedom to not only, go out and about and do teenager stuff, but actually put my lawn equipment in the back of the truck and drive around the neighborhood and get clients that were further out. And I built that business to the age of 20, I think, and I sold it for like $25,000. I sold all the equipment and the book of business, and that kind of catapulted me into my next phase of business, which is really the nightclub industry in South Beach, Miami, Florida. I still owned the lawn service while I was in college, but I got into this nightclub industry, and a friend of mine had invited me to help him promote a nightclub. Said, dude, all you have to do is invite people, have them come. I'll pay you $8 per person, something like that. And I just knew a lot of people in college. I was in a fraternity, and I had like 100 people that showed up, and I made like $800 cash my very first night of promoting. And I was like, oh man, I work for 10 hours sweating and covered in dirt, cutting lawns to make like $300, which $300 cash in one day was really good 20 years ago, or actually more now. But $800 cash by just inviting people to a party blew my mind. So it took me a few years to really build up in that industry. But eventually, after I sold the lawn service, I was full time into the nightclub while I was still going to college. And I ended up just stopped going to college and just went all in when it came to the nightclub industry. And I did really well, made lots of money. So I made so much money, Mike, that I had cash that I had to buy a money counter, because at the end of the night,
Wow.
I was counting the bills and my thumbs were getting sliced from all the counting of the cash. And I had to spend $350 in buying a money counter like at the bank. Brrr. It was ridiculous. But like every good story, right? It had to come to an end where business got a little bit more competitive. So I was making less, and I was preparing to launch my biggest spring break ever, because that's where I made the most of my money. Within the 2.5 months of spring break, made like 70% of my profit for the year. And I was working at Senior Frogs in South Beach. It's no longer there. They've closed down since. But I had been there for 4 or 5 years running the events, and I had invested probably like $15,000, $20,000 into making the place look nicer and different colors and lights and sound equipment, because I knew that if I had a better party environment, I could get more people to come and I could make a lot more money. So I was willing to invest to get that return. And 2 weeks before we were ready to launch for spring break, after like 3.5 months of work and money and time investing in getting the place ready, the 4 owners sat me down and thanked me for all the work that I have done over the years and said, this year, we're going to do spring break on our own. Thank you for all your help, but we'd like you to pack up your office and we're going to take it from here. And I was just like my heart dropped. And then I was like, okay, but what about the 20-something thousand I've invested in making this place what it is right now? And they said, well, we never asked you to invest that money. We allowed you to do it. That was your choice. And they didn't reimburse me 1 penny for what I had invested for the paint and the lights and everything. And there was nothing. I mean, I took the sound equipment with me, but I couldn't take the paint off the walls.
And you could have made the point, but the intent was this, and you should have, when you gave permission, you should have said, hey, just so you know, but you were probably at a younger age and they were probably at an older experience that they would have just crushed that. And you saw the line.
24 years old.
Yeah.
Didn't have a contract, didn't have anything in writing. Everything was on a handshake.
Yep.
And boy, did I learn that when you make agreements, you better have it in writing. And and not only did I lose the money I invested in fixing up the place, I lost about $40,000 to $60,000 in potential earned revenue within that 2.5 months, because I had to move to a smaller venue that didn't have any of the stuff I prepared. It was a lot less people could fit. It didn't have the promotions. And I ended up making, I don't know, 30,000 when I should have made like 70, 80,000. And after that, I was so depressed. I was so distraught that I moved out of South Beach, and I couldn't go back for like a decade. Like I would just, like, even driving by, my body would literally tense up, and it was
like PTSD.
I never thought that I've experienced it, but I actually have, now that I really think about it. I was really, really traumatized. And that also really put me in a state of not trusting people. And even though when I think about it later on from a business perspective, it wasn't a thing about trust. It was a thing about business. Business is business. And I didn't properly do my business. I didn't write anything in writing. I didn't create an agreement. I asked, could I do this? And they let me do it. And I got exactly what I asked for. And they watched me do that.
You know, it's like they say, you either win or you learn, and you learned a hard lesson there.
Very costly, hard lesson. Yeah. So, but because of that, it definitely made me who I am today. And I was able to transition from the nightclub industry into the business industry, which is where I still am today. And I created the company Amp Your Brand. I had This Is Nightlife Entertainment, closed that company, started it in, I think, 2003, closed it in 2006, and created Amp Your Brand. And the cool thing is, this company now has been around for over 20 years, Mike.
Yeah.
20
So I want to go back
years
to
I've had
something, Ray. That tough time, that lesson you learned was an obvious cut from I'm going to do this promotion for these people. You now started your own thing. That's obvious. I want to go back to the lawn care. How did you recognize that it was time to sell that lawn care business? Because you did that before you got the introduction from the friend to get into the nightclub business. At what point were you back in those days going, it's run its course, I'm going to sell it versus I'm going to scale it?
So the only reason I sold the lawn business is because I got into the nightclub business simultaneously.
Got it.
I was making too much cash too easily from the nightclub that it made no sense to be doing hard labor to make a third of the money. That was the only reason. If I would have never been introduced to the nightclub scene, I would have probably scaled and grown the lawn business, which it's interesting, right? Because, and this is also another lesson that maybe I'm digesting right now. Sometimes it's not about the fast money. Sometimes it's about the longer term, because that lawn service could still be here today, making millions of dollars.
And I would throw into your passion and enthusiasm. Maybe it had run its course and you were like viewing it as almost punching the clock in your own world. Maybe you were like, you know what? I could scale it, but it's not really my thing. I don't want to be known for that. And then you saw that nightclub and that kind of rose new passion in you. I think that is a factor people need to recognize within themselves.
Well, I will agree that cutting lawns in the Florida sun covered in dirt for 10 hours a day was not as attractive as just hanging out at a nightclub in the VIP and just listening to music and hanging out with beautiful people. Like, there was no comparison between the two. But if I really think back, which one was more fulfilling? And I had a lot of pride in my work. Like, when I would cut a lawn, it wasn't just cutting the lawn. Like, I remember, like, if the blade left a few little pieces of grass, I'd literally go and pluck the individual pieces of grass to keep it super clean. And my edges were tight. And now, even today, I'm like, oh man, that edging is not good when I walk by a place, because I'm a recovering perfectionist. I set an excellent standard instead of trying perfection, because there's no such thing, right? So now I say, I have a very high level of excellence in everything I do. So I had a lot of pride in that work. Not saying in the nightclubs I didn't, but it was different then. It was just a lot of money, cash that I was able to make. So
you went from lawn care to the nightclub, learned the business and learned the hard lesson. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to start my own thing that's been around now for over 20 years. How do you serve your clients now? Let's dive into that, because you probably have some lessons, like you just mentioned about the trimming and the edging. There's probably some trimming and edging lessons you carry into your current business now to deliver a spectacular product.
Transitioning from the nightclub industry to the business promotions industry literally was like 99% the same. So the same email marketing, text message marketing, social media marketing. We used MySpace. When I was at the nightclub, MySpace.
Google that, people.
Dating myself, right? So social media marketing, photography, something I did in the nightclub industry that nobody was really doing, and then became a business, was I hired another college student to take pictures during the event. And then we would get people's information, or we would give them the link to the website to go see their pictures. But before they could see their pictures, they had to put their name and their email as an opt-in to get access to the pictures. And that's how we started building our list. And then we would put a watermark on the photo with "This is Nightlife Entertainment" and our website. So then when people would post it on MySpace or later on Facebook, they'd have our branding on the pictures. Now, back then, I didn't realize that I was doing branding, I was doing marketing, I was doing promotions, which is what I teach and specialize in now. But then from photos, we got into video. So the same photographer, I got him a handy cam. Remember the handy cam? Little
had
disc,
one.
right? The little mini
handheld.
VHS.
Pop it out.
Yes, exactly, with the pop out. So now he would take pictures and he would do video. And back then, there was no, there wasn't Google Drive, there wasn't Dropbox. There was this website called Fotkey, which was like photo key. And I had to pay to upload the photos there to host the photos. And from there, we would attach it to the website because there wasn't hosting. And then we started putting video on there so people be able to watch themselves in the video in the party, not only the photos, and we'd get their information. And that's the first list building that I actually ever did. And now, fast forward, we use CRMs, we use project management systems, we use all the 360 site software that I created. We use all different types of technologies to lead generate, build our lists, and market to people. But we still use photography, we still use videos, we still use social media, we still use emails, and we still do grassroots, and we still do flyers like we used to back in the day. I remember promoting club flyers. We'd print 5,000. Runs were 5,000. We'd have designs every week for the new flyer. It's the same thing now. Posters, banners, nothing's changed. Now I deal with entrepreneurs. Now I deal with founder-led businesses and people trying to promote their products and services. But what we do is the same. Now, something in my business that has shifted was that I started working with companies, doing their websites, doing their videos, doing their branding and marketing. And I had a program where I was basically a fractional VCMO, Virtual Chief Marketing Officer. And as I got into speaking, I got into more personal branding. So I ended up branding myself as the brand and my company as a separate brand, and started realizing, wow, the more I build my personal brand, the more attraction I can provide to my company brands. And I can have multiple businesses and my personal brand reflects. And then I went down that rabbit hole of personal branding for almost a decade. And until recently, I started shifting, going back to business branding because I realized building a personal brand is very important, but you still need to build the company brand, the service brand, the product brand, the event brand, whatever it is that you want to offer and sell, you should build a brand around it. So yes, we still do personal branding, but now we build brands for everything our clients do. And 20 years later, or 17, 18 years later, I came full circle back to the fractional VCMO program that I started in 2006. And now we're in 2026, and I'm doing the same program all over again. So talk about—
But with nuances like Tony Robbins teaches, CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. I'll bet you that the full circle point A, you've come around in 20 years. If you were to look at the deliverables on both sides, you have constantly and never-endingly improved that, polished that up so that now it's with the times, but it's the core things. It's kind of like, there's nothing new under the sun. Well, there's still marketing. There's still the flyers. There's still the graphics. It's just gotten better, easier, and more efficient.
You nailed it. The foundation has not changed, but the structure around it has been upgraded and has been elevated. Like, for example, this podcast, like, for example, the book, The Drive to Success, right? Publishing was not part of what I did back then, which is why I create amazing partnerships like I do with you, Mike, and I provide new services that I know benefit me and benefit my clients. My entire business is based on that concept. What works for me well? How can I take it, repurpose it, make it even better, and then serve it to my clients in a speed that they would have never been able to do without me?
So let's talk about the next point when you now are coming through this journey and you're talking about serving your, entrepreneurial clients, your leaders. What is the problem you're solving for them? Because it cannot be marketing. You don't solve marketing. That's the highest level. Like, I do marketing. I'm the virtual CMO. That's fine to say that. But when it gets down under 2, 3, 4 different layers, what's the big problem you're solving for them?
You nailed it, Mike, right? I talk about I'm the global branding expert. And yes, that's true. But I'm really a business growth strategist. That's what I truly am, because I'm using branding, marketing, promotions, and sales to support companies to grow. But the strategies that I'm coming up with is really where my strong suit. It's not the advertising, the marketing, the branding. I have an entire team that does that, and they're amazing at what they do. But that is a vehicle to get to a goal and a result, which is to increase revenue, increase lead flow, and at the end of the day, have a more successful business that makes more impact. That's truly what I do. And we serve founder-led businesses where the owner is the face of their business, right? So we support them in building their personal brand along with all their brands and consistently having a team available for what they need when they need it. So we're going to launch a new event. We're going to do a new course. We want to build a mastermind. We want to launch a new product. We need to restructure our offering. We want to publish a book. We want to be in a magazine. We want to do PR. We want to do a blog. We need a new website. We need a new landing page. We need a new video. Like, you name it, you can come up with anything you need to support the growth of your business. My consultants and myself will come up with a strategy, and then my team will actually do what's called the implementation. So the entrepreneur can stay focused in their lane and what it is that they do and what they're experts at.
Hearing that, tell me if I've got this dialed in well, because if you think about, here's the problem we solve. Yeah, but you've got a lot of people that are your competitors. What's your competitive advantage? Well, your competitive advantage is A, having the strategy, B, having the one-stop shop, and C, having the implementation, because knowledge is power. Sounds all great and fine, but you got to implement that knowledge. So when you can say to that founder-led business, that entrepreneur, hey, here's the end result. We're talking about the transformation you want to achieve down the road. We can help you get there because we've got the strategy, we've got the tactics, and oh, by the way, we're going to implement it for you and with you.
Well, I think it's everything you said, and it's efficiency, because time is the most valuable thing we have, right? So we're experts in the space because we've done it so many times. And not only have we done it so many times, I'm a very systematic individual. So having someone like me who says, I did this really well, let me create a formula to duplicate this for other people, means you have high level of excellence and a very fast turnaround, which doesn't just save you money. It means it can make you more money if you have something done faster. A lot of people don't realize that you have to always calculate how long something takes compared to how much you spend. You might spend less, but if it takes longer, it might have actually cost you more than if you would have spent more money, had it done quicker, and already been making profitability. The other thing is, I'm unique, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but truly I'm unique in the sense that I know everything behind the scenes. I know everything from the creative aspect of how to support and elevate the entrepreneur and their brand. But I also know everything from the front end. I know how to speak. I know how to present. I know how to sell. So I can support in elevating the entrepreneur, but I can also support in teaching them how to be the best version of themselves to promote themselves out there.
Because you've gone through that process yourself where you had to be the chief cook and bottle washer. And then you started going, I need to have a team to do this piece of it. Let me pull back a little. I need to have a team to do that piece of it. Let me pull back a little so that you can do the highest and best use of your time. And since you've gone through that successfully, you can then kind of say, I got the machete through the jungle. Follow me. Success leaves clues. I can show you how to do what I've done.
And again, I'm not trying to I thank God, right? I think it's a blessing from God that I've been able to have this many of experiences, have this wide of a range of knowledge and experience, because knowledge is one thing. Experience with the knowledge is two different things.
Yeah.
And there's nothing a client could ask me that they want to do in their business that I don't already have multiple experiences or have done it and being able to give them I mean, that's the number one feedback I get. It's like, great, your brain, how you think is just like, I don't believe how you can come up with solutions that fast and that good. And then your team takes what you just came up with and implements it in a few days. That's unheard of in this industry. And the truth is, what are we all really trying to do? We're trying to build a business that makes money, but really, we're really just trying to make good in the world. We're trying to make impact in the world. So I've gotten to a point in my life where I realize that I can choose who I work with. And I only want to work with faith-based, heart-centered, purpose-driven founders who lead their business, not just to monetize, but to also move their mission forward. And some people have that desire. They just haven't figured out to do it. And those are my favorite because now I get to support them in actually achieving something that was in their mind, but now it's actually possible. And then there's a lot of businesses that already fit that category, and I'm just the perfect match for them. And here's what I will say. In the beginning, when I was a lot younger, I was scared to share my faith because that it might push someone away or it might limit some type of business or something like that. And as the years have gone by and as I've evolved, I've realized that if my faith, if my message pushes someone away that doesn't want to do business with me, then guess what? It's not someone I want to do business with at all.
Yeah. It's a polarizing aspect where you're not being mean saying, I won't work with you,
Correct.
but you're saying, here's me with all my warts and everything. And if you are like me and you fit this bill, let's work together. But it's almost a disservice to have someone come on board that doesn't fit because it's just not going to be the right outcome for them.
You're right. I don't limit anyone from working with me. I'm just very clear who I want to work with publicly, which then in turns attracts the right people. And I've seen it over the years, like the conversations you and I have had, like I could just see it's like I have such an amazing client base because I'm attracting the right people, because I'm delivering my message publicly to the world.
So let's kind of take a half a step back, because we've kind of talked a little bit about now some of these mountaintop experiences that you've come to. You've not arrived. We know that. That's an obvious. You're always watching to improve, but you're a failure or a breakdown, similar to the lesson you learned in the nightclub. But what's something else, like when you were working with clients and you were helping them to build their business? What are some of the failures and breakdowns that kind of gave a little bit of a scar, a little bit of a punch to the gut that you had to recognize, persevere through, and then improve upon so that never happened again?
I would say one of the most challenging parts of building any business is hiring the right team members. And I've had multiple times where I've had team members where they're good people, good intentions, even good work, but very little results. So when you're paying someone a decent amount of money and they're doing things but not producing results, especially in ROI, then what happens is no new money's coming in, but this huge expense is going out. And over time, it literally starts to drain the business. And I'll never forget, there was a point where I ended up about $80,000 in the red because of a few team members that I had, which again, nothing against the team members. They just might have not been in the right place or had the right structure, or, I didn't realize that my business wasn't in the right capacity to have that team member. And then just every month, $10,000, $15,000, $10,000, $15,000, $10,000, $15,000. After 6 months, next thing you know, I'm like, oh my God, we're in the hole. And it took me almost a year and a half to get out of it. And that was a really tough, depressing time.
Yeah.
I remember talking to some fellow entrepreneurs, like, I don't know what to do. And in the end of the day, I had to go back to the basics. Start all over, like had done all this stuff, had to go back to the basics and start from step one and just do it all over again. And I think it took about 18 months, got into the black, and then profitability just shot from there. So I share that you have to be careful, what you're investing in, that it doesn't drain from the company. You have to have the right people in the right seat of the bus at the right time, right? And you have to be careful that you're not just putting out money that ends up draining the company. And when all else fails, always go back to the basics.
That's a powerful realization, because here's this failure breakdown. How did that lead to more success? Well, I had to clean up the mess. Then how do I prevent it from happening again? And I think that this is something that I've taught my kids over the years. If you had something really great happen, recognize it, celebrate it. How can you replicate it? If you had something negative happen, learn from it. How can you prevent that from happening again? What you just said about going back to the basics, that doesn't prevent you from ever happening a little hiccup down the road in the business again, but it'll keep it from getting to that big level. So that lesson right there, the basics and having on your radar, I need to keep in mind, maybe I let it get to that 10 or 15 mark, but not past that. And then I'm going to cut it off and cut your losses.
Got it. 100%.
So looking back kind of through your journey, I'm sure you could probably recount 17 more, battle scars and lessons, but would you do anything differently if you were given the chance? Would you go back to your lawn care guy and go, you know what, maybe I'll dabble on the nightclub side and I'm going to scale the business? Would you do anything differently?
That's such a good question, Mike. Never really sat there and thought about it, but I will say this. I don't think I would have done anything differently in how I've built my business and the decisions I made. But what I would do differently that has taken me a lot of years and I'm still working on today is the way I operate with other people, the way I communicate with other people. I used to come from the you need to do this standpoint. And now I'm more like, I invite you to consider doing this. And those are two completely different energies.
Yeah.
And I'm still working on it because it was so ingrained back when I was young to like grind and just push and break through the wall. And didn't matter how many casualties. I was just trying to get to success and just get to the end result. But I realized really how you deal with people, especially on your team, especially with your family, is probably the most important thing that I would personally change, because you ruin relationships, you ruin, people's morale, minimizing people because you're frustrated because things aren't working, and you make them wrong, and people are having challenges and make mistakes, and like you're chastising them instead of supporting them and uplifting them. That would be the number one thing that I would change.
It reminds me of the Maya Angelou quote, which I know you know this one, but people will, never forget. They will forget what you said to them, the words, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
100%. And that's something
Huge.
that now I'm just more focused on really taking care of and investing in my team and my clients in a way that I've never done in the past, regardless of how successful my business. Like I've created a profit sharing pool now for my team. I take out 25% of profits and I split that amongst my team members now. So now everyone's invested to support the company, not just in doing a good job, but in making the company more profitable because I share it with them. And I would have never thought of doing that in the past. And I, give raises and bonuses and really just acknowledge people for the great work that they're doing. And I wouldn't be here without my team. So like, that's the number one thing that's most important for me right now.
So looking back also through some of those, speed bumps and hurdles, what are some of the key attributes that people need to recognize in their own life to then go, here's a problem. It's not going to devastate me. I need to overcome this, whether it's personal or professional. What are some of those personality and mindset attributes?
I created a document that for my company, and it's the team company culture. And we talk about our mission statement, our purpose statement, our vision statement. And it's really about do the right thing for the right reason all the time. And integrity would be the most number one, honoring your word, right? And honesty, vulnerability. And this is something that before we hire someone, regardless of their skill set, no matter how good they are, what they do, if they're not in alignment with our company culture and our vision and what we're doing, it's not a good fit for us. Like that's more important than how qualified they are for the position. So I would encourage people to, if you're listening to this, to number one, get clear on what your vision statement, what your mission statement, what your purpose statement, your positioning statement, and your core values, right? For integrity, honesty, loyalty, professionalism, courtesy. We have a whole list of all of our values on this document, and we share that with everyone who comes on new. And when we have our team meetings, we go over it together. I think that's something that makes a really
huge. And for you to have recognized the need for that and created each level of that document, there has to be an overarching why. What's your why now that you've come through some of these trials and tribulations and learned these lessons? What's the why for Rey Perez?
For me, it's really about service. I've realized that my mission on this planet, why I was put here, is to elevate other leaders who are here to make impact, to be the best version of themselves so that we can have that ripple effect. Like I've realized it's not just as a branding and marketing guy, like my literal spiritual purpose is to elevate other leaders to make a more positive impact in the world. That's why I'm here.
Love it. Well, Ray, let's wrap up with this. If someone is interested in embracing and engaging with your brand, what's the best way they could reach out and connect with you?
Well, the best way to connect with me is my personal site, rayperez360.com. You can connect with me on any of my social medias, my websites, my books. You can even call or text me right there. And if you're listening to this podcast and you hear this, I would like to give you a gift. I'd love to give you an opportunity to attend our Business Growth Bootcamp. It's a 3-day event where we support founder-led businesses and entrepreneurs in building their brand. If you're listening to this podcast and you text me that you heard me on the Drive to Success podcast and say, I would like tickets to BGB, Business Growth Bootcamp, I will send you a complimentary ticket for you and a guest.
Excellent. Ray, it's been a pleasure. Love your passion, your enthusiasm, and appreciate you coming on and telling your story.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you, my friend.